I'm Abby Hart, Senior Editor of Landscape Management, with the latest edition of Landscape Management at Home Edition. Today, we're back with our friends at the National Association of Landscape Professionals, Britt Wood, CEO, and Andrew Bray, Vice President of Government Relations. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, let's get started. So, gentlemen, where do things stand in DC after last week? There was a lot that happened, the Georgia runoff elections, and then obviously the turmoil at the Capitol. So can you kind of give us a rundown on where things stand with the industry and NALP after the events of last week?
Obviously, I think last week's events were jarring for anybody, not just the landscape industry or Britt or myself personally. I've talked with several people about this, people that work up on the Hill, people that have worked on the Hill. As someone that did work on the Hill, definitely struck an emotional note. I mean, I think those are hallowed grounds, and I still get excited whenever I get to go up on the Hill on behalf of NALP. I know when our members get to come to DC for Legislative Day, I think they are still awestruck when they get to walk on the Capitol. So to see some of that stuff was really disturbing. But I will also say the fact that people feel that disenfranchised is also disturbing. And it kind of speaks to this very, unsavory discourse that we've got to fix. And that's not going to be done just here alone at the landscape industry. That's some national healing. But I do also remind everyone that, from NLP perspective and a policy perspective, we don't talk to one side of the aisle or one political ideology. Almost any smart policy we're ever going to put forward is going to have bipartisan support. And Abby knows my eternal optimist nature. Sometimes when you hit rock bottom, which I would consider last Wednesday's rock bottom, might be a time to reset the discourse and some opportunities for some more moderates to kind of emerge. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with the Senate, but I want to let Britt have a few comments as well.
Yeah, I echo Andrew's statements, having spent a lot of time on the Hill in my time as well. Certainly it was a disappointing thing to see. I do agree, though, that this is a time to reset. I think, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about the Georgia elections, but those were really eye-opening. I think if you talk to Andrew and I, when it became clear that President-elect Biden was in fact the winner, and we kind of had gauged the fact that the Republicans would still have control of the Senate. We did not anticipate that both seats in Georgia would in fact go Democrat. So it certainly places a different dynamic, and we can get into the nitty gritty and the details on it. But Andrew's point about moderates prevailing, when everything is that, let's remember, the House got a little closer. The Democrats lost a good bit of their majority. Now the Senate's 50-50. That means that the people in the middle are going to have more power. And that's probably a pretty good thing, because there's more of an opportunity for compromise. And I hope, like Andrew does, some healing that will come along with that compromise.
Thank you both for those insights. Can we dig a little bit into the results of the Georgia runoff and how that might affect the industry and decisions that are made in government moving forward?
Sure. Yeah, so just like Britt said, what's interesting, if you want to dig into some of the numbers, and I'm not going to do that to you right now, Abby, and be all dorky, but both newly elected Democratic senators actually outperformed Biden from a number standpoint. So what that kind of tells you is it's not so much that they really outperformed Biden, it's that the Republican incumbents actually were drugged down, I think, by Trump's rhetoric, to be really honest with you. And I think almost every autopsy that's already been done in just a week's time is putting a lot of blame on the president's rhetoric, bringing down moderates and disenfranchising the entire electoral process. And I think that'll be interesting to study in the coming weeks, months, and years, because I think there's such fear from Republicans about being primaried by somebody that's very pro-Trump part of the party is a big fear. And the fact that he so performed that poorly may lessen his impact on some of those primaries that are going to definitely happen in about a year, as soon as the House starts running again for their 2-year terms. But from a practical standpoint in the Senate, let's just remember how now we're here. We're at a 50-50 tie. okay? And McConnell is still majority leader because we have Vice President Biden. I mean, Vice President Pence, I'm sorry. As soon as the inauguration will happen, the majority status will flip over because we're going to be in a 50-50 tie, but the tie break will go to Vice President-elect Harris. And at that point, all the gavels will transition over to Democratic control. Now, why this is important is in the Senate, even more so the House, the majority controls whatever comes to the floor and whatever gets brought up in a hearing, in committee, and a markup, whatever needs to be done. So they wield tremendous control. Back the last time it was this close was between Trent Lott and Tom Daschle back in 2000, and they kind of almost ruled in a bipartisan, like each 50-50 kind of manner. I don't think that's going to happen between McConnell and Schumer. I don't think anybody should have those illusions. But what I do think people need to understand is this idea that being at this 50-50 tie and Democrats having all this control, are they going to pack the court? Are they going to do some of these extreme things? And Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, which is a very Republican state, has already stated he's not going to go along with that. So just understand that as long as Joe Manchin isn't going to go with some of these extreme ideas, we never even get to a tie that Vice President Harris would be able to break. So I think what you're going to see is, as Britt was saying, these moderates take control. And I use the example of the COVID relief package we just got was basically the brainchild of bipartisan group of senators that put that package together. They were listening to both their leadership and they came together on their own. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think what's going to happen also right as we come out of these gates is Biden's going to have 100 days. 100 days is always what you hear, and all of a sudden they start losing some of the political capital. I'm positive, I haven't talked to anybody, I don't think Biden wants to be dealing with this impeachment stuff, okay? I really don't. I think he wants to come out of the gate on something strong like COVID relief, extend everything that was extended from March 31st through the rest of the year, do some more targeted outreach and financial assistance to those most impacted. And then he wants to move on to 2 or 3 things, whether that be climate change, immigration, infrastructure. That's what he wants to get done. And he wants to move in a bipartisan fashion. And if you heard all those things I just said, COVID relief, infrastructure, immigration, those are all tremendous opportunities for the landscape industry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think what Andrew's really, the bottom line of what Andrew's talking about for the industry at this point is we don't want you to be overly concerned based on how the election turned out. And candidly, we see some opportunities in H-2B. Now, there are opportunities. We don't know whether they're going to come to fruition, but we knew that the Trump administration, based on their reactions, were really not being very supportive of H-2B. And so we're optimistic that we've got a potential pathway forward on that. Certainly, we're going to be dealing with new regulators in the EPA. But again, we feel like there's still this juncture where everything's going to turn the tide and it's going to make business very difficult. So, I would just echo everything that Andrew said. He's got the great detail on it, but is to say, don't be overly concerned and make sure, and this is the other thing I want to encourage folks to do, make sure you get involved and understand what's going on. Andrew puts out a newsletter called The Advocate every week. And if he's got a committee called ACT that gets involved in state issues, but also nationally. This is the time to get involved because we do have a kind of a fresh start. And I think there's some great opportunity for our industry.
That's great. Thanks, Britt and Andrew, for that insight. I feel like there's some positives to this, even though it's definitely a time of turmoil. Britt, you mentioned new regulators at the EPA, and I'm just wondering if the two of you can touch a little bit about the latest appointments from the Biden administration, regarding the EPA and other areas of government.
Sure. Well, I'll start by just saying the Biden team is actually trying to start the confirmation hearings on some of the really key posts. The idea when you bring in a president, there's certain things that need to get filled very quickly, and that's generally state, treasury, defense, and homeland security. Those 4 are coming out hot. And obviously DHS is something that's very important to us. And Mayorkas, who was undersecretary there under Obama, is somebody that we're really eager to work with. He understands H-2B. He understands the value of guest worker visas, but he wants to make sure the programs are running right. And I think he's going to be willing to play ball with us. I still think they're going to defer to Congress on certain things, but where the administration is given discretionary authority, we're optimistic that we may have an ally over there. With regards to USDA, I think, Abby, you and I were talking before. Tom Vilsack, former governor of Iowa, who has held this position before, is a very agricultural-friendly appointment. I think some of those on the far left think he's too friendly with agricultural, but that's just fine for our perspective from the landscape industry. We welcome Secretary Vilsack back to that post. With regards to EPA, we got a regulator out of North Carolina that does have roots to EPA and earlier in his career named Michael Reagan. And there's some unknowns about him, but when you contrast his resume and his style and his engagement with industry on key issues, I think he might be a little more attractive than the Rupert Barry Nichols and a few of the other names that were being bounced around. But we've actually already sent a note through back channels, and I'm very hopeful we'll be able to have an ear from somebody in his camp with regard to some of the pesticide and fertilizer related stuff as soon as possible. But then lastly, as being the eternal optimist, I did save the worst for last. We knew they weren't going to all be roses. We know this is a Democratic administration, and as we figured, Department of Labor is getting somebody named Marty Walsh, who is I guess he's exiting mayor of Boston, but he has deep roots to labor, big labor. And, that's going to present some challenges. We kind of expected that. Now the question is, what sort of labor stuff is he going to prioritize? I truly don't think H-2B is going to be his priority, but I think there's going to be some other things around the wages involving with prevailing wage and things like that. Joint employer status stuff that could be kind of onerous. We know there's some minimum wage stuff that may be coming out of both Congress and the administration. So we're going to keep our eye open on all of those issues. I think it's very similar to this flip-flop back of rehashing what Obama did and then Trump undid, and now Biden's going to bring back. So it's kind of like a seesaw. So I don't think there's anything that's going to be coming out of left field there. We just know we're going to have some challenges.
Yeah, I would second that, and for me, that's the most critical part, what you mentioned at the end there, Andrew, which is this is a seesaw. And the thing about regulatory agencies, for folks out there who may not know this, they are the least efficient but most effective way to govern, right? Because once they get and put rules in place, then the seesaw really begins. The good news is that the seesaw is still sitting on this end where we're happy, and it's going to take it a little while to get there. And we kind of know this beast from the Obama administration, and we kind of understand the types of people and also some of the arguments that may resonate with them. So, and I think that's where we as an industry are lucky to have someone like Andrew, because he has that experience, he has that background. And he understands a lot of how these folks are thinking. So his messaging to them he's well prepared to take on this particular challenge. And we do think that, certainly there's going to be some challenges in labor, but at the end of the day, I feel pretty good about where we are.
Thank you both for that. I will definitely keep an eye on the Advocate and kind of see how NALP is keeping the industry abreast of new developments as far as regulations coming from above. So thank you both. And I guess my last question is regarding PPP. So PPP Round 2, it's coming. What should business owners know about the second round, and what should they do to make sure they're receiving the assistance they need?
Yep. So not only is it coming, it's here, Abby. It is here. So, actually, late last week, the Small Business Administration promulgated interim final rules, basically authorizing both the PPP loan and its new eligibility requirements, which would include 501c6s and some other entities, for first draw loans, right? But it also opened up a whole nother application process for second draw loans. So that's for those companies that are going to still be under pressure this year. They have to have already used all of their current, loan before they can go for a second loan. And so both of those rules went out. But the one thing I would tell you, Abby, is just to clarify, the applications are up. but they're starting with community-based banks and smaller banks to give those in certain communities first bite at the apple. I recommend anybody that's listening to this, go to SBA. If you literally Google, I'll make this easy, Google SBA PPP application, okay? And it will be the first thing that will show up. I will also add, though, as we're closing out the year, that deductibility issue we were working on to make sure that if the loan's forgiven, those expenses can still be deductible on your taxes. That was fixed, and that was fixed in the stimulus package, and Treasury actually released an updated opinion affirming that belief. So everyone can go ahead and, you got a PPP loan, file your taxes like you usually would. But if you want the PPP, you know that those funds are limited. I recommend everyone getting in there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and obviously, as a C6, this is NALP's first crack at the PPP loans, so we're grateful for it as well, and commend Andrew and the team, you know, especially working on that deductibility issue that was raised with us, and we wanted to make sure we got the clarity. And we're part of many other larger groups that go in and do this lobbying, and we band together with that. But you know, it's helpful when we all can speak as one voice and make sure that something like that deductibility gets put through. So we're excited that that's there, and that's one less thing for the members to have to worry about. And Abby, if I can just you know, also reiterate to folks that as issues continue to evolve and develop with COVID, and especially as it relates to vaccine, and other things along that line, we will continue to do everything we can to make information as easy to find. We had a COVID resource site, which the team put together beginning in March. We continually update that. So, and we will be working on some packages in terms of helping folks to pass along the benefits of vaccines, so that everyone on their teams, when the vaccine is available, will be encouraged to take it. We don't want to put something out there and tell everybody get excited about getting a vaccine and then you can't get it till May. So we'll closely monitor that, but we will be putting together things that will help our members really have a good, clear message about why vaccines are important.
Thank you, Britt, Andrew. Between the vaccine and a second round of PPP loans, hopefully we'll start to see businesses get back on their feet in 2021. I'd like to thank my guests today, Britt Wood, CEO of NALP, and Andrew Bray, VP of Government Relations for NALP. I'm Abby Hart, Senior Editor of Landscape Management, and thank you for watching Landscape Management at Home Edition.